Politics is often loud, chaotic, and performative, but every once in a while, it's about something much quieter and far more consequential. It's about who gets protected, who gets hurt, who gets left behind when the cameras turn off. In Indiana House District 94, stretching from International Marketplace to Guyan Lakes, those questions aren't theoretical, they're lived every single day. And tonight, we're talking with a lawmaker who's made a career out of asking uncomfortable questions in rooms that would rather not answer them. Welcome back to Hold 'em Accountable. I'm your host, Derek Holder. Tonight, we're joined by State Representative Cherish Pryor, the Democratic incumbent representing Indiana's 94th State House District, a district as diverse, complex, and often overlooked as any in the state. Representative Pryor serves in House leadership and has built a legislative record centered on civil rights, consumer protection, equity, and accountability, often standing in opposition to policies that disproportionately harm working families, immigrants, and communities of color here in Indianapolis. Tonight's conversation isn't about party labels or sound bites. It's about what representation actually looks like when the votes are counted, the bills are filed, and the consequences land back home. So let's get into it. State Representative Cherish Pryor, thank you for joining Hold Them
No
Accountable.
problem. Thank you for inviting me to be with you today.
District 94 stretches from the International Marketplace to Guyan Lakes and Michigan Highland. What do you see as the single most urgent issue facing these neighborhoods right now? And how would you address it during your next term?
Right now, people are really talking about affordability and the cost of living. Things are extremely high. And I will tell you, one of the main things that people are talking about are the high cost of their utility bills. And so, as a state, um, and as a legislator, I have been very consistent about, and I serve on utilities, by the way. I've been consistent about trying to hold utility companies accountable and also make sure that they're transparent with the ratepayers and also fighting them every step of the way when they go in for a rate increase. Um, because I get my bill, and it's always super high, and the utility companies are always wanting to make a profit off of ratepayers because they want to line their pockets and the pockets of their shareholders. So affordability is a big issue. And then also daycare. The fact that, there are a lot of people that want to work, but daycare is very expensive. And so people are just having a hard time finding quality daycare for their small ones. And the state has really significantly cut funds that will help families with their daycare costs. And so those are things that my district, and there are other things as well, but those are some of the couple of things that they're talking about. People pay attention to what's happening with the LEAP project, with Citizens Gas, and then also with these data centers. Um, those are major issues that will have an impact on our water quality as well as our utility, our energy, electric costs. So those are two things that I am concerned about, that I'm fighting, and I'm going to continue to do that because I live in the community too, and I want the community to be good for me and also for the people in my district as well.
International Marketplace is one of the most culturally diverse areas in Indiana. What specific policies should the state pursue to support immigrant owned small businesses, workforce inclusion, and language access services in your district?
I think what we should do is support some of the organizations that are there, that are trying to do the work and work with the immigrant communities, like the Global Village, and Mary Clark, that does a really good job reaching out. So supporting organizations like that that know and understand those communities, and then investing in them, whether it's tax incentives or tax credits to help those communities expand their businesses and stay viable as well. So those are the things that I would say that we can be doing, and also they're making sure that with ICE, and making sure that the folks feel comfortable and feel safe in the community, and they're not scared to come out of their house and scared to go to work. We have to protect the citizens and make sure that they're treated fairly and make sure that their rights are not taken advantage of.
Many residents in neighborhoods like Snacks, Guyan Creek, Gateway West, and Deer Creek cite rising housing costs and
Mhm.
aging housing stock as growing concerns. What role should the state play in protecting affordable housing and preventing displacement in Northwest Indianapolis?
Yeah, and this is something that I've looked at and worked on for years. One of the issues that people have been concerned about is the rising cost of their property taxes. And, your property taxes and your assessed value are connected because we have that 1% property tax cap. But I think what the state can do is figure out a way in which we can cap the liability that people pay on their property tax bill because if people are losing their homes in tax sale or losing their home because of foreclosure because they can't pay their property tax bill because it's gotten so high, that destabilizes the community. And so the state can play a role by making sure that we have adequate tax deductions, or looking at our homestead deductions and seeing whether or not that is something that we should increase. And then also, um, from the other standpoint, looking at everything that is on a person's property tax bill and making sure that we're building housing that people can afford to live in, and making sure that we have more apartment complexes that are affordable for people to live in. Because even though an actual house may be expensive, that also increases the rent as well. So when one go up, the other goes up because there's demand there. So I think it's really important that we look at how can we get more housing stock, affordable housing stock on the market so that people have a place to live. Yeah. And I want to be specific about the affordability piece, which you talked about. A $200,000 house isn't necessarily an entry level house for a lot of people. That's a lot of money. So how can we get homes that are quality homes, and quality apartments where people could actually afford to live. And when I've asked people who rent, and they say, "Oh, I pay $1,200 in rent or $1,300 in rent," and I'm scratching my head thinking, "Oh my God, that's just a lot of money." And it is when you can potentially pay $900 for a mortgage. That's an investment. That's something that you can sell and make money off. One of the largest investments people can make. So, I think that we need to make sure that we're looking at this holistically. The other thing too is I think that we need to teach people how to better finance and let people understand the value of purchasing a home as well. And we need to start that actually with our kids in school and not wait until they're the older. So these young people understand the value of a dollar in investing in where you live and not paying someone else's mortgage because you're renting.
Public safety means different things to different communities. How do you balance funding for law enforcement with investments in mental health care, violence prevention, and community based safety programs for areas like Brookstone, Fieldstone, and Liberty Creek South?
Mental health is a real issue. And I think the state we have a surplus, over $2 billion surplus. I think that the state should do more and fully fund the mental health challenges that people are facing. We had tried to address this maybe 3 years ago. Did put some money in mental health, but not enough. And then the other, for one thing, a lot of the localities were talking about the crisis intervention piece for people who needed it. So helping local units of government fund those crisis intervention teams for people who are in need of who have a mental health crisis. Um, and I think it's important. I do think it's important that we fund our police department. I think it's important that we train our police department to identify when a person is having a mental health crisis as well. And just better training of our police officers, whether it's cultural competency, um, diversity. Those are things that we need to make sure that our police department is adequately trained in. So when they're going into an environment in which they're not used to dealing with people that look like them, they understand how to deal with them. But the other thing too is I think that we do expect a lot um, of law enforcement officials because oftentimes they're the first one on the scene of a mental health breakdown. So the early detention and recognition that a person is needing help, I think would really go a long way in saving people's lives and not and also the lives of the officer as well.
Indiana consistently ranks low in worker protection and wages. What legislative steps should be taken to improve pay, workplace safety, and job stability for service workers and warehouse workers who make up a large part of District 94's workforce?
Increase the minimum wage, which has not been increased in far too long. We need to make sure that our wages is consistently increased, just like the inflation continues to increase. I think it's sad that we're, not even at $10 an hour minimum wage. That's just shameful. Even if a person has two jobs, working full time, they still will have a very difficult time making ends meet with the minimum wage that we have here in the state of Indiana. So that would be the one thing. The other thing too that I think will help protect workers is making sure that we have strong unions as well, and folks becoming part of those unions and being active in those unions, so that they have someone that is fighting for their rights and for their protections and safety in their workplaces.
You have focused heavily on civil rights, equality, and consumer protections. What civil rights issues do you believe are most under threat at the State House right now? And how should a representative from District 94 respond?
I think really, when you look at the fact that we have bills that is going to um, restructure the way the Civil Rights Commission um, is, we had a bill that was going to upend the Women's Commission, the Latino Commission, the Social Status of Black Males Commission, um, and the Native American Commission. I think that people need to pay attention to what's happening with those organizations and stay engaged in what I think as a legislature we need to be doing is making sure we're funding those organizations and making them strong. And making sure that the people who are appointed to those boards and commissions are invested in them. They participate in the meetings and they're doing activities and programs that are going to be improving those communities. So, which organizations are under threat? I would say we need to keep an eye on those four to make sure that they don't go away and that they stay around so that they're able to help the people who need the help. The other thing too is making sure the Civil Rights Commission is adequately funded and is really living up to his mission to protect people who feel like they have been mistreated and that their civil rights have been violated. That's another key. So if you feel that you have had any issues, you need to keep an eye on what the Civil Rights Commission is doing and the priority that is placed in the administration.
Residents near Diane Creek and Eagles Watch often raise concerns about infrastructure, flooding, and environmental quality. What state level investments are needed to improve infrastructure resilience and environmental health in these neighborhoods?
So one thing that I think that we can do is make sure that as a state legislature, um, we don't try to micromanage local units of government and allow them to implement the plans and the infrastructure needs of those local uh, that the locals feel is necessary. I think oftentimes as a legislature, we feel that we're not only state legislators, but sometimes the city county council members, and quite frankly, even more frustrating sometimes is sometimes we think we're members of the school board. Um, and so I think the locals best understand the issues and the challenges they are facing. And we need to stop regulating to the point where they are unable to really have a meaningful impact locally.
Healthcare access, especially mental health care, remains limited across Marion County. What concrete actions should Indiana take to expand affordable, accessible health care for families across the state?
Well, I think one, we have cut back on the number of slots available for Medicaid. I think we need to make sure that when we come back in next year, that people who are indeed eligible, they have an opportunity to get Medicaid, and we don't put a cap on the number of people that have access to Medicaid assistance because healthcare is important. The other thing is making sure that even insurance companies are not making it more difficult for people who have insurance to get the healthcare needs, the healthcare that they need. And making sure the doctor and the patient are the ones that decide on what is the best care for them and not the insurance company. So as a legislature, that's something that we definitely can do. I actually have a bill that is got out of committee, in which a person that has cancer, an aggressive form of cancer, doesn't have to go through step therapy anymore. They immediately go to the treatment that the doctor feel is best for them. And so getting rid of that step therapy puts that person that has an aggressive form of cancer that much ahead and making sure that they're able to get the treatment that they need and hopefully saving their lives.
Education outcomes vary widely within Indianapolis. How should the state support public schools serving District 94 while ensuring accountability, equity, and adequate funding for students and teachers?
Yeah. Well, like I said before, sometimes some of us legislators, and certainly not me, think that we know better than the superintendents, the teachers, and the parents about how to educate kids. Sometimes I feel like we're a glorified school board. So I feel that what we should be here, our role, quite frankly, I feel, is that of listening to what the teachers are saying is needed and what the superintendents are saying is needed, what the school boards is saying is needed from us as state legislators, and we provide that to them versus being a hindrance. The other thing is making sure that we're fully funding those needs as well. Because although the state do fund schools, they're still underfunded. And I began our interview talking about utilities. Utilities going up for everybody. Utilities are also going up for the schools as well. And so even though we may be giving more money to the school each year, if we're not keeping up with the costs that they're incurring, we still are underfunding them. And the cost of everything is going up for schools. We had, I think it was the superintendent that came and testified before Ways and Means that the cost of a school bus it run anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 for just one bus. And so we can't continue to think of our funding for education the way we did 5, 10, 15 years ago because the cost of everything is skyrocketing, particularly with the tariff. So we truly have to focus on funding our education at the level that it should be because even though initially it's an upfront cost, on the back end we're saving money because we're educating these kids. And if we're adequately educating them, they're going to be going out to the workforce. They're going to be making a lot more money. They're going to be paying more in income taxes. So, the more educated we can have our kids, the better off we are as a state.
You have served in the House leadership and built long standing relationships in the State House. How do you measure effectiveness as a legislator? And what should voters in District 94 expect from their representative on day one of the next term?
I think an effective legislator is someone that listens to their constituents and responds to their constituents. It's not part of it is so that's one part. The interaction with the constituents and the responsiveness. The other part, I think, of being an effective legislator is the interaction with your colleagues um, as a legislator. It's not always, I heard someone say, how many bills have this person gotten passed? The number of bills that a person gets passed doesn't necessarily mean that they're um, a good or bad legislator. Is it because is the legislation good or bad? And so an effective legislator wants to make sure that whatever legislation passed or that they vote for is going to be positive for the people in their community. The other thing that I tell people is just because a bill doesn't show me as the author or even as a co-author or sponsor or a co-sponsor doesn't mean that my fingerprints are all over that bill because I may have an amendment that got incorporated in that bill. I may have been able to, I may have gotten something changed that was detrimental and harmful in that bill. So just looking at how many bills a legislator passed isn't, is not the best way to judge an effective legislator, but looking at what may be in a bill or came out of a bill that the legislator was able to get done is a much better way of looking at that. And I know that part can be pretty tricky and difficult because it requires some research. It's not as easy as pulling up my name and seeing, oh, these are all represented prior bills. That's not the best way. For instance, today I got a bill added into the Department of Local Government bill. So and I'm the co-author of that bill, but I'm not the author of the bill. So to say, you're not effective because you haven't gotten any bills passed when I was able to get a whole bill put into another bill, that's being an effective legislator as well.
Before we wrap this up, we're going to shift gears. We've talked policy, we've talked priorities, we've talked about what District 94 needs and what the State House gets right and wrong. Now it's time to get a little sharper. This next segment is about instincts, accountability, and where you draw the line when the vote board lights up. No long explanations, no hedging, just a call. This is where we separate what you hold onto from what you're willing to fold away. State Representative Pryor, welcome to Hold 'em or Fold 'em. State preemption laws that prevent Indianapolis from raising its own minimum wage.
Where do I stand on that? Indianapolis should be able to decide that.
Targeted state grants for immigrant owned small businesses in the international marketplace.
But yeah, I think that that would be a great idea for my district as well.
Further tax incentives for developers that don't include affordability requirements.
Think that the city needs to consider that, and anything that's getting state tax dollars or local tax dollars should include a component that is going to include low income and affordable housing.
Increase state funding for mental health response teams as an alternative to police calls in neighborhoods like Guyan Creek and Michigan Highland.
Oh, definitely support that. Prevention is the best way, and getting people help um, is always a better alternative to putting people in jail.
State restrictions that limit local control over zoning and land use in areas facing displacement like Gateway West and Brookstone.
I prefer local control because I know that locals best know their communities, and one size does not fit all.
Expanded consumer protections against predatory lending and utility shutoffs affecting working families.
I think we need to get a handle of these utilities. They take a lot of money out of our communities and don't invest nearly enough back. In some instances, they're able to just push a button to turn power back on. So we got to hold them accountable.
School voucher expansion that diverts funding from Indianapolis public schools to serving this district.
Um, I think that we need to put a cap on the voucher program, invest that money into traditional schools. Uh, People who make $1 million, uh, $2 million, we should not be funding their education at the sacrifice of families who can barely make it.
Environmental and flood mitigation funding for neighborhoods near Guyan Creek and Deer Creek.
Yeah, we need to invest in that and have more money for flood mitigation.
Legislation protecting LGBTQIA plus Hoosiers from discrimination in housing and employment statewide.
Yeah. Um, Nobody should be discriminated against, regardless of their race, gender identity, who they love. People need to be treated fairly, and the LGBTQ plus community no different. They deserve an opportunity to have fair housing and fair opportunities just like everybody else.
Leadership at the state house that prioritizes culture war bills over bread and butter issues like housing, wages, and healthcare.
Think if we spent more time on the issues that people are concerned about, we'd be much better off. And those are some of the issues.
Before we go, I want to take a moment to say thank you, Representative Pryor. Thank you for showing up, for engaging directly, and being willing to put your record, your priorities, and your instincts on the table in an era where way too many elected officials prefer talking points over conversations. That matters. Representation isn't just about holding office. It's about showing up for neighborhoods, places that don't always make headlines, but always feel the impact of the decisions made at the state house. Tonight wasn't about slogans or party branding. It was about policy, accountability, and whether the work being done in Indianapolis and at the state house actually reflects the lives of people who live there. Voters deserve to hear directly from the people asking for their trust, not filtered, not softened, not reduced to 30-second clips. So, Representative Pryor, thank you for stepping into that space, having the conversation. And to everyone watching and listening, this is your democracy. These decisions don't end on election day. They show up in your rent, your paycheck, your school, your health care, and your sense of security. So, as always, stay informed, ask questions, and hold them accountable.